Hey guys, it's Amy here, and today I bring you my February wrap up. In February I read 10 books. I'm really excited to share them with you because I had some really good reads this month. I had 3 5-star reads, which never happens, so let's just jump into it and start with my lower star rating first. So starting with the 3-star reads, firstly we have Library of Souls by Ransom. This is the 3rd and final book in the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children trilogy. I read the first 2 a number of years ago, like it's been a long time between those first couple of books and me picking up this one, so I have a feeling that might have affected my enjoyment of it. I did think it was a good book. Obviously I can't really share much of what happened with you in the book because if you haven't read the other ones then I'm going to be spoiling it for you. But if you've never heard of this trilogy before, it basically follows the story of a young boy who is able to slip in and out of these different kind of worlds, and inside these worlds live peculiar beings. So people who have peculiar abilities, not the kind of run-of-the-mill, you know, person that can fly or whatever. It's all kind of quite bizarre things, like someone who can contain bees and he has a whole swarm of bees around him, and someone who just like floats away unless you like chain them down to the floor and things like that. So he discovers that he is like somewhat connected to these peculiar people through a link with his grandfather, and he then ends up going on quite an adventure with them, and this is the conclusion of that adventure. Another big element of these books is the photography, because Ransom has found all these very old photos and smattered them through the story basically to illustrate the story. So that in the first 2 books I really enjoyed because I felt like it flowed really well and that the pictures kind of paired with the story really well. In this one I kind of got the impression that the story was being moulded around the photos. So he'd found these particular photos and was kind of changing parts of the story just to go along with it. Because there were definitely some parts of the story that just didn't really seem to be necessary, but then there was a photo, so it kind of seemed like he was just doing it to kind of have the photo in there. It's a really good idea and I did enjoy it, and I would recommend this series, to be honest. I think possibly though you should just read them a little bit closer together because I had such a big gap between the second and this book that I think my like excitement for it kind of dropped. But yeah, there we go. Next for the 3 stars we have my non-fiction book for the month, which was Big Magic by Elizabeth Gilbert. The subtitle of this is Creative Living Beyond the Fear. So basically this one is a kind of essay from Elizabeth Gilbert discussing creativity and being a creative person and putting stuff out into the world. It does have a large focus on writing because obviously she is an author and that is kind of what she knows the best, I guess, so she does focus a lot on writing. So if you are an aspiring writer or if that's something that you want to do with your life, I think this book would be perfect for you. But not only for the writing, it does kind of encompass all arts-based careers and aspirations and all those kind of things to do with creativity basically. I did really enjoy this one. I loved the way it was written because I sometimes am a bit worried about jumping into a non-fiction book because I feel like it's going to be quite heavy and dense and academic, and this was nothing like that at all. This pretty much just felt like Elizabeth Gilbert having like a friendly chat with you. Like there was no kind of, I don't feel like it would be difficult for anyone to understand. Elizabeth had this really nice way of like interweaving her own experiences and life stories into the story as well, and kind of making good examples of that to illustrate her ideas towards creativity, and I really liked that. Next for my 3-star reads we have Sofia Khan Is Not Obliged by Ayisha Malik. This one I was hoping to really enjoy. I thought it was okay. The problem is I am not the biggest fan of romance, and it has to be pretty spot on for me to enjoy a romance novel because like the kind of romance I really like is like Pride and Prejudice, Jane Eyre, all those kind of like old school classic romances that just have this kind of quaintness about them. And so I find sometimes that just modern day romance novels just don't hit the spot for me. Let me tell you what it's about. Basically, this one follows a young lady named Sofia Khan. She is a Muslim woman living in London. She is a publisher, so all these kind of things are quite nice really, because obviously we're living in this booktube bubble of kind of publishing and books and all of that, so it was quite like relatable I guess in that sense, because I know a lot of people who are publishers and working in the publishing industry, so it was kind of nice to see that element of it. So through working at this publishing house, she manages to get herself like a book deal because she starts discussing all these kind of dating experiences that she has had as a Muslim woman and the kind of culture surrounding marriage and dating and being with someone as a Muslim, and she speaks about this at work, and then suddenly her work colleagues and her kind of managers and stuff are saying, you need to write a book on this, we're going to give you this amount of money, you've got this amount of time, and you can write a book talking about Muslim dating, and it needs to be light and fluffy. So that is the main kind of root of this story. She is writing this book, so through doing that she is then going on dates with men to kind of get stories to write into this book, and through these kind of research dates she then meets certain men who she ends up falling for or doesn't end up falling for, and all these kind of things, as you can probably expect from a romance type novel like this. Things I really enjoyed about this book were the culture side of things, because I don't really know anyone who is Muslim, and I guess I've never really thought about Muslim people on a great extent before, so this was really interesting seeing the kind of family life and the way like they think towards marriage and all of these kind of things. So yeah, it was a pretty middle of the road book for me, but I am going to read the next one and see how it goes, and I will let you know what I think when I read it. And my final 3-star read for the month was The Icarus Girl by Helen Oyeyemi. I am planning on reading, if you've seen my kind of goals video for this year, all of Oyeyemi's books throughout the course of the year. I'm reading them chronologically from when they were published, and this was the first one. I've only ever read one other book from Oyeyemi, which was White is for Witching, and in both that and this one there is like an element of the kind of mystic, or almost like kind of like magical realism, but it's kind of just something darker kind of underlining things, and that was definitely present in this book. So this one basically follows a young girl named Jessamy and her family. Her dad is white and her mum is Nigerian. At the beginning of the novel, they visit Nigeria. Whilst there, Jessamy meets a young girl named Tilly, and Tilly always seems to be getting up to no good and is kind of enticing Jessamy into doing naughty things and getting into trouble. When the holiday ends and the family move back to England, Tilly is also there with her family, and other things ensue. I don't really want to go too much more into it because I think the uncovering of that storyline between these two young girls is brilliant and very dark, and elements of this story were just so interesting psychologically. If you are someone who enjoys things to do with child psychology, then I think you would really enjoy this book. I'm really looking forward to continuing on with Oyeyemi's work this year. Moving on to my 4-star reads for the month, and you probably won't be surprised to see this graphic novel. It is Deadly Class Volume 4. This one is called Die For Me. I can't really go into what this one's about. I say this every time I review one of these Deadly Class books, because if you haven't read them then it's going to spoil you, isn't it? I'm really enjoying this series, and I'm kind of annoyed that the next one isn't ready for me to read like immediately. I just want to try and find, like, here we are, the art style is brilliant, the colours they use is wonderful, the story, I love it. It's not something I think I would usually read, to be honest, but this, I don't know, I just really love the story. It follows one young boy and you learn about his past, and his family are kind of dead, and he ends up going to this school for assassins, and in that school just everything happens. It's all pretty insane, to be honest. But yeah, if you have read this and you enjoy it, do let me know down below, because I haven't really spoken to many people who've read this one and kind of love it as much as I do, so yeah, let me know. Next for the 4-star reads we have Purple Hibiscus by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. This is the first book that I've read from this author, and I thought it was really, really good. Also, love this just edition, is wonderful. This was a deeply moving and pretty depressing book, to be honest, so if you want a kind of happy story, maybe don't pick this one up, or if you're feeling in a bit of a low mood, which like sometimes I do, and if I start a book like this then I usually have to put it straight back down again because I know it's going to send me like way down. This one again is set in Nigeria. We've had a couple of books this month in Nigeria. It follows the story of a young girl named Kambili and her family. Her father seems to be involved in some kind of political turmoil. There's a lot of kind of uprooting of the government and stuff happening in Nigeria at the time of this book, and due to all this turmoil and the connections that her father has to it, it gets to the point where it's not particularly safe for Kambili and her brother to live at home with her family, so they end up moving to a kind of distant village to live with her aunt, and the lifestyle that her aunt and cousins lead is extremely different to the life that she has at home with her family. Her father is extremely strict, extremely controlling of the family, very abusive, and so I would be tempted to say as well, if you're not one who copes well reading kind of stories of abuse and kind of violence like that towards children and wives and things, then maybe kind of consider that before reading this book, because there is quite a bit of that. The writing was wonderful and I really, really enjoyed it. So if you have any recommendations of which book I should pick up next from this author, do let me know down below. And my final 4-star read for the month was another graphic novel, and that is The Encyclopedia of Early Earth by Isabel Greenberg. What I really loved about this book was Isabel Greenberg utilises stories from the Bible but doesn't push it down your throat, and also twists them so they're not, you know, it's not just like a retelling of the Bible. It doesn't come across as it's trying to shove a message down your throat, and it's not trying to be all like philosophical and kind of, you know, give you a deeper meaning. For instance, The Alchemist, that's what I'm kind of getting at, you know, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho, whatever his name is. Like, that was so overtly and so in your face religious, or the message anyway was, you know, you've got to be a good person and this will come to you. This is so different, and this is just brilliant. So the stories, for instance, like Cain and Abel, and the guy who gets like eaten by a whale, which I can't remember who he was in the Bible, various things like that, all smattered in this story about the first kind of person on Earth and how the Earth kind of came to be, and early Earth basically. It's wonderful. I don't know if I can even explain it any better than that, and I don't know if I've even really done a good job, to be honest, but I really hope that whatever I've just said has encouraged you to pick up this book, because it was really, really fantastic. Oh dear, Amy. I had surgery yesterday, and I thought it'd be a really good idea to try and film this video today, so I hope I'm making sense. And I hope I just haven't made like a big mashup, because to be honest I don't think I want to film it again, so you're just gonna have to get what you're given. By the way, it wasn't anything like super serious surgery, it was very, very minor, but oh my goodness was I anxious. And like, for anyone who left like a nice message for me yesterday when I mentioned it, thank you very much, because I was stressed out. So now we're moving on to my 5-star reads for the month, and I have 3 of them, and one of them's a YA book, guys. This hasn't happened in a long time, because, well, one, I haven't really been reading a lot of YA books, but yeah, anyway, it's a 5-star, so we'll talk about that one first, shall we? My first 5-star YA book in a very, very long time, and it is The Rest of Us Just Live Here by Patrick Ness. I love Patrick Ness, guys. I have read, I believe, most of his books, if not all of them now. There might be like one maybe that I haven't read. This was wonderful. I read it in one sitting, which I also haven't done in a very, very long time. I just thought it was spot on so many levels that I don't think I can even explain it to you. So basically, this book follows the story of the sidekicks, the underdogs, the people who aren't usually in the limelight. So you've got your heroes, and that's usually who the story is about. But this is everyone else, and just the normal people who are just trying to live their lives while the heroes are doing their hero stuff over there. So yes, in this there are mentions of like vampires and otherworldly things, but in a very like far off sense, because they're not being dealt with directly by the main character. So our main character is a boy named Mikey. There are so many things that were dealt with so fantastically in this book. Mikey clearly has OCD. His sister has like recovered, or is in the process of recovering from some form of like anorexia or eating disorder. His best friend is bisexual or gay, or struggling with those kind of things, and also Mikey just isn't too sure how he feels about all of that as well. Like, it sounds a lot to be fitting in one book, but it was done and written so fantastically that you don't even think to yourself like, God, another, like, you know, another issue that has been brought into the story. Like, I can't get my words out. I can't get my words out to say how brilliant it is. The relationships in this book were brilliant. It was funny. I think I mentioned earlier in the video that it takes quite a lot for a book to be able to make me laugh. This book had me in stitches, like properly laughing out loud stitches, and it also had me in tears as well. It was just fantastic, guys. I want everyone to go and read it. If my garbled review there hasn't sold you on this book yet, let me just tell you one thing about Mikey's best friend. His best friend is a descendant of the god of cats. Yeah, I think I'm just gonna have to leave it at that. The god of cats. I mean, like, how do people come up with this stuff? It is brilliant. Like, that had me in stitches. Like, literally his best friend just has these cats like coming up to him all the time, like trying to like oh, I love it. I love cats. So there we go. I'm gonna leave that review there because I have a feeling that's gonna be a bugger to edit. Moving on to my second 5-star read for the month, and it's a slightly more serious one, and that is All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. This one is set during World War II. We follow two storylines pretty much from near the very beginning of each of their lives. So the first of our two main characters is a young Parisian girl named Marie. She is living in Paris with her father. Marie is blind and her father works for the museum in Paris, and to aid Marie with finding her way around the city whilst he's at work, he has built her this extremely intricate and precise model of Paris, which she kind of runs her hands over and memorises so that when she goes out by herself she can find her way home, and that idea is just amazing to me. So yes, we're with Marie and her father in Paris right up until the point when Germany occupies Paris and the kind of German troops start coming in and the people of Paris start fleeing to the outskirts or hiding. So the other main character that we follow in this book is a young German boy named Werner, and he is living in Germany at the time. He's an orphan, he has a sister, and they're living in like a home. He is picked up by the Hitler Youth because he is extremely intelligent and can work radios and fix things and just has this innate knowledge of how things come together basically, and Hitler Youth like that, and they want to kind of get him on side so that he can build things for them and kind of work all these and kind of invent all these like transmitters and stuff, which is what he ends up doing. As you can probably guess, these two character stories intertwine at some point and they do link up at some point, but not in a gratuitous way, not in a kind of, oh, I'm gonna go off and fall in love with a German boy. Like, it's not that at all, which this totally could have, you know, that's what the story could have been, and it wasn't, and I love that. I love that there was no like in-your-face romance. I love that it was so connected to every part of the story, like his love for his sister, this is Werner, his love for his sister and the fact that he had to leave her to go to the Hitler Youth, and the guilt that he carried with him for like his whole life because he did that and he didn't think what he was doing was right, but he just kept doing it anyway based on fear. It's just like fantastic, because then come the point when he's, you know, faced with dealing with Marie, you know, this young blind girl who is the enemy, that changes him, and it's just fantastic. Like, I loved it so much, guys. Like, I think this is probably one of the best, if not the best, historical fiction set in World War II that I have read. I'm trying to think back now. I have read a lot, but for fiction, this was just phenomenal. I would highly, highly recommend. Moving on to my final 5-star read for the month. I can't wait to share it with you guys. It is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier. This one follows the story of a young orphan boy named Philip who gets adopted into his cousin's home. His cousin's named Ambrose. They live together there very, very happily and you know, very like men's men, kind of like living the life, living the dream, no women around and that kind of stuff. When kind of Philip is old enough to kind of man the estate by himself, Ambrose goes off on holiday in the winter so that he can see some sun and kind of not be all grumpy and stuff. Whilst Ambrose is off travelling Europe, Philip gets news that Ambrose has gone and married someone, a young lady named Rachel, and this to Philip is quite shocking. Philip then has to deal with all this and prepare for them to return to the estate that they will now all live on together, but then he starts to receive some very peculiar and worrying letters from Ambrose, which gives off the opinion that Ambrose may be in danger and that things may not be going as expected with this new wife, Rachel. So in a gallant effort to protect his guardian, Ambrose, Philip goes off to try and find him in Italy, only to discover when he gets there that Ambrose has died. Bum, bum, bum. The story then goes on to detail the arrival of Rachel in England into Cornwall to this estate where Philip is, and their interactions, and the whole debacle is just brilliant. He's such an unreliable narrator. She is such a character. It's written so brilliant. It's so intense. Like, if you guys are a big fan of Agatha Christie or Wilkie Collins, I would say Daphne du Maurier is like the love child of those two authors. Like, it's just perfect. Like, the intensity, the characters, all of it was brilliant. I would really highly recommend. Spoiler for my next book haul, but I think I'll probably be picking up something else from Daphne du Maurier very soon. So there we are, that is the end of my February book haul. I would love to hear what you guys thought. Have you read any of these? What did you think of them? What did you read in February? Do let me know down below. I would love to chat to you. As always, I will leave links to Facebook, Tumblr, Twitter, everything I've mentioned today down below. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see you soon. Bye!